Well, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us to have this chat about now what after you've developed your keywords. I'm Sabrina. I'm the VP of Partner Development at CopyPress. We're really fortunate to have some amazing SEOs on the call that will be helping us demystify the process and what comes next after you have a bunch of keywords. So I'd like to just start with some introductions. So we'll go around. And if you just like to say your name, some experience, anything that you're working on right now, and we'll start there. So Jeremy, if you'd like to kick us off, please.
Sure. I'm the Director of Special Projects at CopyPress, which is a fancy way of saying I'm doing everything and nothing all at once. Doing some product management. We've got some awesome competitor analysis tools that we're working on that I'm excited to develop. I've been in SEO for 15 years, working with realtors, plumbers, the whole lot. So happy to contribute and get these guys together to talk about what to do once you have a list of keywords.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy. I'm just going around my Zoom screen. So Paul's next for me, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Paul Shapiro. I lead technical SEO and product management SEO over at Shopify. Been in SEO for a little over 10 years and focused mostly on big, large enterprise type clients and in-house roles. Happy to be here.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Jonas is next on my screen.
Great. I'm recently moved from an SEO specific role into a digital marketing analyst position, still at Terrakeet, and we work with Fortune 500 companies. We recently launched a new category of marketing called owned asset optimization, kind of combines different aspects of SEO and content and online reputation management, all about prioritizing the most controllable marketing assets that brands have in order to connect with customers.
Awesome. And last but not least, we have Jeff.
Hi, I'm Jeff Coyle. I'm the co-founder and chief strategy officer for MarketMuse. I've been fortunately or unfortunately in the search, lead gen, product management space for about 25 years. And I've been building content strategies for mid-market to small enterprise companies of all types, shapes, and sizes with MarketMuse for the last 8 years. And looking forward to this discussion.
Great. Thank you all so much for agreeing to share some of your time and your expertise. It's super exciting to have you all here. So since we're recording this and people will likely be watching this later, just to kind of set the scene for you all and for our future viewers, we are going from the perspective of you're a small company or mid-sized company or just one person who has gathered this keyword list, and you're looking at all of these words and it's kind of like a now what? What do you do with this? How do you dive into it? And how do you determine what's actually going to give you the best ROI? So we're going to break that down, and I'm just going to start with asking you all some questions. Feel free to answer. I hope I don't have to, but I will call on people. I don't mind. But my first question is, you've got that keyword list. What would you say is the best first step? Just what do you do first after you have that list? I'm going to put Jeremy in the hot seat because
Sure.
I can see he wants to answer.
Yeah, I think you gotta. My first instinct is to say go back and get more, but really what you need to do is start applying some logic and separating out, because whether it's SEMrush, Ahrefs, any of the keyword research tools out there, what you get out is like throwing a net into the ocean and you pull it back, you're going to have a really weird catch. And you need to have some sort of process in place to start narrowing that down and grouping it. And that also, you need to have a better sense of like how big are you setting your net in the first place? Are you trying to catch all of the keywords for your entire site? Are you trying to scope out like your plan for the next quarter, the next year. So setting some guidelines and boundaries and figuring out, how do I group this? What are the words that make sense together? What are the clusters? And I know Jeff loves clusters. And I want to talk about, see what Paul and Jonas do in this phase of like grouping, labeling, grabbing things and clustering things.
Yeah, I think
Well-
one thing I'll add there is that I think it matters how you got to that list of what you do next. So if you popped it into your favorite solution, like the ones that Jeremy mentioned, if you're starting from a word and you're turning it into a list, it's typically going to be looking at related topics. It's typically going to be looking for string matches, and then you're at kind of a universe. But the process of universe development may come from your site. So if you read all the pages on your site that you already have, all the things you wrote about, plus all the things you're ranking for, that is like the universe of what you want to be or what you are about. And if that's where you're starting, maybe you add some things to it with the keyword research solution, with other seeds, maybe things you haven't approached yet to append. Maybe if you have a weaker site and you're doing it from a competitive cohort analysis, so you're looking at a competitor and understanding what they're doing. But in the end, you have that universe that then you need to label and start to put into buckets. Then it gets into the how do you put it in buckets. But those are some of the ways to do it. And I like to say, it's not just about you. You are in a small company, but I think you want to get buy-in on the final product. So get some inputs from as many people in the organization as you can, so that they won't look at that and go, well, we don't want to write about that. But yeah.
And that's great, Jeff. I'm glad you brought up the expert aspect, as that is something we've discussed. Jeremy and I have been fortunate enough to do webinars on this topic before, so I might have a little bit of insight into Jeremy's mind with this, but sourcing outside experts and information to even just build that initial keyword list and keyword universe is so important. So making sure you're really having a robust and varied keyword universe to start with before you start clustering. And Jeff kind of led into the next question is, okay, so you have a varied list, you feel really confident with this universe. How do you cluster this? So what do you start looking at? Do you just start throwing words together in one chunk and go, this looks good? Or is there a way to go about it more methodically? Open to it.
What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, it very much depends what you have going into it. It also might depend on like what is the tenure of your website? Like, how long have you been doing this? Is your content marketing efforts, are those like really good? Like, so are we talking about you're the competitor versus like other people being the competitors? Because like if you have major gaps in your content, then maybe the competition is, step one, and then step two is like outside of the competition. What is the competition not doing that you're not doing? So you need to determine that. And then you worry about, are you like clustering your content? And then you can layer in metrics like search volume, competition, right to win, those sort of things that you start to like zero in on, like what are your next steps for content creation?
It almost feels like, you have the first step of, I've got a list, and then you ask, what did I miss? Like what wasn't there? So that's going back to talking to customer support representatives, talking to actual customers to figure out what their questions were, and then start to fill in from those sides, the human detail, but then also looking at your market picture of, am I David or am I Goliath? Am I the 800-pound gorilla, or do I have to fight with the 800-pound gorilla and he's really jealous about these particular bananas? I have no chance for those bananas, but maybe those. And then we get to finally having some sort of list. Is there anything else you see, Jonas, there? It seems like the first step is review. Okay, did I get enough keywords to to move on to the filtering process, it almost feels like.
Yeah, I mean, and also even, I mean, to build on what Jeff had said earlier too, like the idea of how did you get here is important, because it's you start with this universe of keywords, but it all kind of comes down to solving the problems of your audience and connecting with your audience. So every keyword, you know, in terms of how to group them, always comes back to the idea of when someone searches for this, what was the intent behind their search? So rather than, I mean, I know the two predominant means of grouping tend to fall into like the keyword matching, you know, this word contains X, therefore group it, versus these things have the same set of search results in Google, therefore they are solving the same intent. And that's kind of like, I think the way that we would prefer to do it, because there might be a lot of different ways to phrase something that are trying to reach the same conclusion. And so whenever we're grouping keywords, I think the important thing is to keep in mind, who is the audience? What does their journey look like from the very first discovery of a problem that they're realizing they might need to try to solve, all the way through to like comparing different types of solutions, and then comparing brands within the solution vertical, and then verifying the trust value at the very end of like, you know, does this brand have good reviews? So that whole journey needs to be represented throughout the keyword process. And then we would group within that based on similar intents. And, you know, however whatever methodology you want, I think it needs to be that like all the keywords that get grouped into a blog post should be satisfying the same intent of that blog post, no matter if they have different phrasing or similar phrasings.
So
I think, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I think Jonas hits on the most, and I think something he said is, it may be, you may have missed, is different ways of clustering words. So he mentions clustering based on a data point of is there overlap among search results. So there's two methodologies that are prominent there. One is called centroid and the other is called agglomerate. And don't worry about what that means. It means that you're going to cluster the words that have similar search results and group them by the one that has the highest volume in the one version. And then you're going to actually compare all the words against each other. Imagine like a big wrestling match. Everybody gets to play each other. And those are going to allow for the groupings. I like to layer in semantic relatedness, intent analysis. A good way of doing intent analysis is to look at all of the keyword variants to a word, and they start to tell a story about, if there's a what is, well, there's early stage awareness need. If there's prices, then there's middle of the funnel. If there's troubleshooting like queries, you're going to need that. If there's Brooklyn is in there, you're going to need local intents. If there's Microsoft, you're going to need brand intents. It's not saying go write about Microsoft, right? So you start to learn the buyer journey, the customer journey, the information journey against the story one would tell if they truly knew everything there was to know about the concept. When you get there, the clusters start to write themselves. And I like to bonus this and say, you start knowing your differentiated value. Because once I want to focus on this, I know this, or somebody in my company knows this. Those are the pieces that really keep you differentiated at the end. Start with that so that you kind of have you want to put that brick in each of these clusters. It's my team's special brick, right? As you go, and it ends up being a good methodology.
Well, I like that. And what I kind of hear too is, you know, I've heard it described as like top of funnel, middle funnel, and bottom of funnel. So if I was like looking at my keyword grid and my list of keywords, I'm almost starting to thinking about adding columns to describe or capture, these additional items so that I can kind of bring awareness on a keyword level. Okay, this isn't just in this particular cluster, but maybe this is a set of keywords that is only for people that are they're ignorant of the solution and the problem. They're up here versus people who are aware of the problem but don't know the solution. And then at the bottom, you got people who know what the problem is, know what a solution is, and are deciding which way to solve it. So it sounds like we get our keyword list. We ask ourselves, did we make it big enough? How big does it need to be? Our competitors. We start to cluster, but we also need to respect some secondary factors about funnels and intent behind the scenes.
That's great, Jeremy, and everyone's insights were awesome. It sounds to me that having a really intimate knowledge of your audience base, of your product, of what you're doing is key to this. But in a lot of cases, we may be reaching people who are agency owners that are working with companies that they're not necessarily ingrained in. Does anyone have any recommendations on how to go about clustering and filtering and grouping when you might not have intimate knowledge of the actual funnel? Who should you bring in, or should you bring anyone in? Paul, do you have any ideas?
Yeah, I mean, as a recovering agency guy, I would say that's something you need to do. You need to get that information. You need to talk to people. You need to talk to like the in-house marketers if there are any, or salespeople, or like really spend time like reading and understanding the product. That's just part of the game. You have to do that. If you start creating lists of keywords, then say like create content around that, you're gonna look like an idiot. And I've seen that plenty of times.
Yeah,
I think
yeah, there's definitely been moments at previous agencies where we came up with like a list and we sent to the client. They literally like laughed because that's not even our product. Like that's a similar word for a different product. Or, there's so many, certain niches have like legal restrictions, or brand restrictions that you need to layer on as well. Like, oh, we're a luxury brand, so we're not a space heater. We're we don't want to say swamp cooler. We're not. We do air conditioning, but ours is a portable evaporative cooler. We're a space cooler. So there's you got to have a feedback loop and mechanism to your vested people. If you have somebody else who's signing your checks for this, you need to loop them in and get that feedback. What was your point, Jeff?
I was just saying it's important to also differentiate the expertise and of the folks that you're trying to extract the good goo out of their brain, because you have to, if you're in this role, your job is to be able to ask great questions, pull as much information as you can, because you're acquiring knowledge. So your options are to be a great researcher, right? You find textbooks, you find business books. It is to ask great questions, but you gotta, when you're asking great questions, people, you have to know what they actually have done, or are they an industry expert, right? So there's a big difference between someone who understands HRMS software, HR management software, and the market, versus somebody who's actually run a payroll. Most of those people who understand that software market have never actually run a payroll themselves. You may need both of those people to be able to write a truly valuable entire definition of a buyer journey. Your rubric development and your questions that you ask early on will make it so that you truly can exhibit expertise and authenticity, even if you aren't the one that's authentic, which is critical, right? Especially critical right now.
Yeah, I would say, like, I think that there's a big challenge, and even the question of who don't you talk to might be just as important, because there's a tendency to like differentiate by saying we're different. And like you were saying, Jeremy, like I've seen the same thing where it's like, oh, we're not a cruise company, we're a voyage company. But nobody's searching for voyages unless they're going to maybe Mars or something, but that's not happening yet. So it's important to figure out not only, what are the differentiators of the company, but what language do your customers use when they're trying to understand the product? Not what language do you want them to use, because they're not there yet. Maybe they get there at some point, but really thinking about all the problems they're trying to solve in a way that somebody who doesn't understand the product yet is going to use. And so I don't know. I mean, I would say like, product people, would you say, are they better at that than marketers, or would you say that they're worse than marketers?
They
Neither.
can, yeah, that's a hard one. I think there's different expertise there. Sometimes it seems like people in charge of product kind of have their own internal jargon, and they expect to see that jargon replicated into the marketing, but don't take that necessary step back to ask, like, is this how people actually would pull out their phone and actually search for this thing? Like, if they did speak to their phone and ask for this product, like, what would it be? What would they actually say?
I think when you speak with marketers, they often end their journey after the customer buys something, because they get paid on leads or sales oftentimes. And product persons will often include the wholesale buyer journey post-purchase implementation, onboarding, troubleshooting, whether it's a pair of socks and you're buying your next pair of socks, or it's software, something, a more complex sale. So I think you can get something for different industries, different stages of the buyer journey from different people. And so your C-suite may be very thoughtful and understanding the pain points. Your sales team, your customer success team, thinking about post-purchase. Your marketing team, maybe so be thinking about who put the right person in the right seat for those journeys. And when I've seen that be magical, when the sales team actually feels like they were heard, when the product team actually feels like their stuff made it to a page, because they're not great writers, right? And that ends up being the punchline, but you are supposed to be.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think leads perfectly into the next point is oftentimes what people are searching for and how it's impacted by SEO is a lot different than what the product people or the sales people might be saying. So how do you really find the value in these clusters? So you've clustered, you've cleaned, you kind of have a list that's workable now, but how do you say this keyword of cruise is going to be more valuable than the keyword of voyage that might look and maybe act a little bit more the way the powers that be that okay this stuff may say? Like, how are you actually truly determining what keyword is going to be the most value and get you the best ROI? I used Jonas's example, so I'm going to call on him with the voyage and cruise switch.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of and a lot of trial and error. Sometimes there's a lot of look back and analysis. You got to figure out, track everything, figure out, sometimes you're going to have people coming in from all different points because they've run into competitors, or they've run into affiliates or content aggregators along the path as they've compared one brand versus another. So you don't really know, like, everyone's not going to take the same path to purchase. And so they're going to interact with content on your website differently. So I think the most important thing is to make sure that you don't have holes in the journey, first of all, so that you are able to have that big net, as Jeremy said earlier, so that when people do come in, but you also need to understand the sequence of the journey, so that what is it the likely next step? So if they do happen to have their first encounter on your website with something that is deeper in the funnel, what's the next step that you want them to take? Make sure you have CTAs to that content and measure it and understand if something's not performing, tweak the language for the CTA. If there seems to be sort of this natural pronging off where people are visiting a different page even though you didn't build it into your funnel, maybe there's a reason for that. And then, go back and inspect the journey and watch user videos, look at heat map data. So you're not just looking at, we rank for these keywords and we have all of them on our website, but are you knitting those into the journey somehow? Is the journey that you've orchestrated the one that people naturally want to take? And if not, go back and optimize that journey.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this will depend on how much data you have and what you do with it. Like, Shopify has every keyword matched to like a conversion rate and like what position in the funnel it is, and like at what we can project exactly like what kind of how many conversions we're going to get at each keyword if something moves up and down, and weight things accordingly. That's great. That's not always easy for depending on like the size of business. I think that's probably like an ideal state. But I also want to caution some people, like I think sometimes like SEO gets a little myopic with like the keyword lists, and we don't talk enough about like the full picture. So when you start thinking about things like from more of like a product lens versus like a marketing lens, that completes the full picture. So it's not really just like one or the other. It's not marketing or like product work, but you need the full picture, and you need to try to like break that down. Like marketing and SEO, that's how are people going to get to your website, to your content, to your feature, and then product to sort of complete and bring it full circle.
Yeah, I think
Jeremy, you and I are on it today. I'll just highlight what Paul said resonates really significantly, because it's about what data you have access to. I would also, another caution, I was adding a caution to Paul's caution. The caution I would have is a lot of people are focused on telling you can't, and right to win was something Paul mentioned, telling people you can't win without off page, or you can't win without certain things. You need the breadth and depth of coverage. You need high quality content that's exhibiting expertise. You do need to understand your off page and your historical success rates and your historical authority, both from a link perspective and your existing momentum, to be able to make the decisions about how much content you need in order to maintain or grow. Don't allow yourself to read maybe it's a font of some sort saying it's all about this, it's all about links. It's not all about one thing. If it was all about one thing, then you wouldn't have people like Paul managing a massive BI platform for predictive analysis. I sell a 6 billion keyword database to many large publishers who build out these big BI systems to try to predict this. You can get a little bit predictive if you just understand your existing presence, your momentum, and your off-page factors. Don't think you can't win just because you're not as big as your competitors, because you can.
And on top of that too, like I think there definitely is a tendency for SEOs to kind of pile on to the whole, head term, high volume mindset. And we recently did an analysis where we mapped out all of the content on a blog for one of our customers, and we kind of bucketed those things out. And we saw that about 38%, the top 3 posts drove 38% of the conversions, 3. Right. And then you look at the next 10, and it was like 19-20% of the conversions came for the next 10. And then 43% of the site-wide conversions came from the next 1,400 pages. So all of those pieces of content coming together. And I know, like, Jeff, you've got what, like 15, 20 articles about topic clusters on your site. Not, most of those may not rank, but they're part of the story. They may convert if somebody finds them. So we don't, there's the 0 keyword, 0 search volume, whatever, keyword list. It's not really about that. It's more about, are you covering the topic for your entire audience, and the value that you might get from these really long tail specific queries could be more than the value you get from the higher volume head terms that people are always focused on and competing for, the red meat, so to speak.
All the content you have on a topic is working together as a mass to enable you to open up new opportunities, as well as perform for those, most important money pages or things like that. So don't value pages in isolation.
So I just noticed that my version of Zoom gave me a 40-minute meeting, and there's 1 minute left with you guys. 60 seconds on the clock. What's your final shot?
Paul, go.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say just don't fall into that trap of being the myopic SEO. Consider the full user journey. Think of your keywords as a portfolio, with, you know, each of those keywords contributing a little bit here and a little bit there, and creating a safety net and a room for opportunity.
There's nothing better to compete with than someone that sorts keyword lists by volume, sort descend.
Oh, Jonas, you're on mute.
Think about the overall value of all the assets, all the digital assets that you're creating together as a lump sum, and focus on the controllable things that you can on your website first, and try to take back some of the market share from the aggregators and the publishers that are encroaching on your market share.
Woo, thanks